All right, technical difficulties to start the show. Fantastic. Earlier this week, Eugenio Suarez of the Arizona Diamondbacks had a 4-home run game in a loss, an 8-7 loss to the Atlanta Braves. He was the 19th player in the history of Major League Baseball to have 4 such home runs in one single game. The first was Bobby Lowe of the Bean Eaters, May 30th, 1894, in a 20-11 rout. It was in at the Congress Street grounds in Boston. He hit 71 homers in 18 seasons of his career, and 4 of them came in that game. The next was Ed Delahanty, Hall of Famer, July 13th, 1896, as the Colts won 9-8. The craziest way to just achieve the feat, because 2 of his 4 home runs were inside the park, which is surprising because even the Bobby Lowe game, they were not multiple inside the park home runs. Lou Gehrig, June 3rd, 1932, the Iron Horse, and a Yankees 20-13 win. Gehrig was the first AL player and first modern era to hit 4 home runs in a contest over at Shibe Park against the Athletics in Philadelphia. Chuck Klein, July 10th, Hall of Famer, 1936. Phillies 9, Pirates 6 in a win. Pat Siri of the White Sox, July 18th, 1948, in a 12-11 White Sox win. Gil Hodges, Dodgers, August 31st, 1950. Dodgers won 19-3 against the Braves that day. Joe Adcock of the Braves, July 31st, 1954. The Braves won 15-7. Rocky Colavito of the Cleveland Indians at the time, June 10th, 1959. The Indians won 11-8 against the Baltimore Orioles. Willie Mays, of course, accomplished this feat. April 30th, 1961, in a 14-4 rout of the Atlanta Braves, a Giants win. Mike Schmidt, one of the greatest third basemen of all time, of the Phillies, hit so in April 17, 1976, in an 18-16 win over the Cubs. Bob Horner of the Braves, July 6, 1986, in a loss, 11-6 to the Montreal Expos. Mark Whitten of the Cardinals, September 7, 1993, in a 15-2 Cardinals rout over the Cincinnati Reds. Mike Cameron of the Mariners, rating into this century, May 2nd, 2002. Mariners 15, White Sox 4. Sean Green of the Dodgers, May 23rd, 2002, in a 16-3 rout, Dodgers over Brewers. Carlos Delgado should be in the Hall of Fame. Blue Jays, September 25th, 2003, in a 10-8 win over the Tampa Bay Rays. Josh Hamilton, Rangers, May 8th, 2012. Rangers win 10-3. The two most recent, in 2017, Scooter Gennett, Reds, June 6, 2017, in a 13-1 win over the Cardinals. And JD Martinez, September 4th, 2017, D-backs 13, Dodgers 0. So for Eugenio Suarez to be one of, four now players who hit 4 home runs in a game, to then his team not win the game, it stirred up a lot of conversation, partially because of the time of year we're in. Teams are still figuring things out. There's been some injuries. There's been some slumps. There's been some, heights. A lot of people have brought up the conversation, well, would you rather hit 4 home runs in a game and be one of, 19 men that has done that? Or would you rather have thrown a perfect game because there's less men that have done the 4 home runs? Well, you see right here that you can lose the game even with the 4 home run game. And what's great about perfection is you're winning the game, but it's a full game. You're facing every single batter. You're out there all 9+ innings versus a 4 home run game. I didn't read the details on every single one of those guys who hit there, but it could be a 9-inning game. It could be a 15-inning game. And, you could have 4 at-bats and go 4 for 4, or you could have a game where you have 6, 7 at-bats and 4 of them are home runs. So it's not perfection. It's, the accumulation of the home runs. So to me, it's not even a contest. Perfect game, even though it's a bigger club, is more illustrious. It's something that I'd rather watch in person than a 4 home run game. But hats off to Eugenio Suarez, who made history and did so in a loss. Diamondbacks did just come off a series win against the New York Mets. I still think they're a very good team. Suarez is going to go down as one of those. He had over 300 career home runs, guys. Really, really solid career, and a guy who's a contributor for this Diamondbacks offense. And unfortunately, it came history in a loss, which it can just based on the criteria. But a guy who has not been losing is Yoshinobu Yamamoto of the Los Angeles Dodgers. 3-2 record, but a 1.06 ERA, leads baseball. 1.2 WAR for pitcher, leads the major leagues. He has been exactly what the doctor ordered. In his 6 starts, 34 innings pitched, only 4 earned runs, 43 strikeouts, 11 walks, an ERA plus of 3.71, which leads baseball. He's been exactly what the Dodgers thought they were signing up for when they gave him the richest contract in the history of Major League Baseball for a pitcher. I said it last year on the show that I thought he was going to have a learning curve of an adjustment in his first year in the States, and that I was actually more pro Shota Imanaga for 2024 than I was Yamamoto. But I came out in my prediction show for the National League this year and said that I expect Yamamoto to take that step forward and be a frontline guy this year for the Dodgers. He started to show that potential in the postseason on that World Series run. And this is exactly what the Dodgers need because, Tyler Glass now, made of glass, is already down with an injury again. Dustin May, after starting the year hot, has had some struggles in his last couple starts. They just got Tony Gonsolin back. They're waiting on Clayton Kershaw to come back. Blake Snell went on the IL earlier this season. So to have Yamamoto pitching to his contract is huge for the Dodgers, who are one of 2 teams in Major League Baseball with over 20 wins so far this season with the New York Mets. And you need a guy like that to win that just gauntlet of an NL West. And you also need that kind of top-end pitching to try to repeat as World Series champions. So Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the hype is finally being lived up to. I recommend, tuning into his starts going forward as he, is pushing for ERA things we have not seen for a very long time. And I'm very, very excited about it. And speaking about runs, I think at this point in the season, you know, the records are what they are. Some of it's luck, some of it is bad trends, but teams can't hide who they are in terms of run differential. And if you look at the run differential leaders in Major League Baseball, it'll tell you who's legit and who's not pretty fast. So the top 5 teams in run differential in baseball: Chicago Cubs plus 62 run differential. They've been amazing. New York Mets, one of 2 teams with 20 wins, 58 positive run differential. New York Yankees, who have been just hitting the laces off the baseball, plus 55 run differential. Detroit Tigers, plus 54 run differential. And then the Cincinnati Reds, plus 42 run differential. I know the Cubs are the talk of the town in the NL Central. I still believe in the Brewers. But the Reds, with Terry Francona, I talked about it, that culture shift, getting the most out of your guys. The Reds have done that so far. Hunter Green's looking like a Cy Young front runner right up there with Yamamoto. And the offense is starting to really hit. Outside of Ellie De La Cruz, they're getting contributions from like a lot of different guys. So that's very exciting to see. 5 teams in the top 5 that are not the Dodgers. The Dodgers are at 6 with a plus 36 run differential. And then to round out the top 10, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, and Boston. Everyone else is in the single digits. We're in the negative. And, teams who are who we thought they were. The bottom 2 teams in Major League Baseball. Colorado Rockies, negative 80 run differential. They're on pace to break the White Sox loss record that they just set last season. The Miami Marlins, negative 56 run differential. And a team that I was surprised to see there because they got off to a hot start, the Los Angeles Angels, negative 55 run differential. Baltimore, minus 46. Pittsburgh, minus 43. Outside of Baltimore, those are teams we expected to be bad or expected to be, towards the bottom of the league. But just really, really tells you a lot about where these teams stand. And what I think is interesting is there are exactly 14 teams that are in the positive, and there are exactly 14 teams that are in the negative. And you're asking, wait a minute, that's only 28 teams, Dom. There are 2 teams in Major League Baseball right now with a 0 run differential, which means throughout the course of the Major League season, they have given up the same amount of runs they've been able to produce. And this is not a small sample size now. We are in May. The Atlanta Braves and the Tampa Bay Rays are at a 0 run differential. It is unheard of to see that throughout a whole Major League season. And it is truly, truly, amazing that there's 2 teams right there to split it evenly. So there's 14 positive, 14 negative, and 2 right there in the middle. The Atlanta Braves obviously had a really rough start, but have been playing really good baseball since they started to get healthier. Talked about, their drama that was going on last week. But in terms of baseball play on the field, they have been much better. Even with a loss to the negative 80 run differential Colorado Rockies mixed in there, they've been playing much better baseball than they did to start the season. The Tampa Bay Rays have been sneaky good. They've had a lot of young players looking like they're having breakout seasons, with it, whether it's Junior Caminero and Cameron Meisner in the lineup, or whether it be guys like Shane Baz in the rotation. The Rays are going to Ray, but they are very good, and the AL East, as expected, even with Baltimore struggles, is probably the best division top to bottom, because the bottom of the NL West is pretty low. The peaks and valleys there between the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Giants, the Diamondbacks, and then all the way down there, unfortunately, for people out there in the West, the Colorado Rockies have been struggling, especially on the mound. So giving you an idea of where your team stands so far in terms of run differential, I think is really important. Obviously, things will fluctuate. Like I said, these teams are only in single digits for run differential right now. Arizona, Houston tied at 9. Milwaukee, Philadelphia tied at 6. And then in the negative, Minnesota's at -1. St. Louis is at -4. Kansas City's at -8. Then you start to see the jump. Sacramento and the Chicago White Sox are at a -20 run differential. Texas, wearing the shirt today. Jake Berger gets optioned down to the minor leagues. Jacob deGrom, after struggling, looks like a vintage Jacob deGrom in a start. They've been very up and down. They're about a 500 baseball team right now with a -24 run differential. So things could be a lot worse than their record currently shows. Cleveland, -26. That really hurts me as well. Toronto, -30. Washington, -36. So keep tabs on the run differential. I think it's a better gauge of how good a team is than a record through, the start of May. Once we get, into the dog days of summer in the middle of June into July, then you can start really looking at the record and, what these teams are. But right now, we have one full month of statistics, a little bit in March, a little bit in May to go off of. And these teams are starting to give you a trend as to, what direction they're currently heading in. And teams can flip, teams can get to neutral, teams can go into the positive or drop into the negative, all in the drop of a hat. So it'll be really, really interesting to see what teams end up staying towards the top and towards the bottom of run differential throughout the baseball season. But I think it's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about, this team is really a contender. This team, pitching is legit or lineup is legit. Look at the run differential because it'll give you a overarching circumstance as opposed to looking at individual performances game by game. It gives you a feel throughout the season how they're doing because baseball is a marathon. There's going to be ebbs and flows, ups and downs. You lose 15-3 one night, win 17-2 the next. It happens, basically. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we have to throw it back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. And May 3rd had quite a few things to choose from. I thought there was a pretty interesting story that the state of California actually, filed a grievance with the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim on this date in 2005 to include the city's name of Anaheim on their merchandise and tickets because they were moving away from the Anaheim Angels moniker. And the city was like, hey, you're getting tax breaks because you're in our city and you're not broadcasting that to the national audience. So that was really interesting to read about. There was obviously some Hall of Fame birthdays and some great moments throughout the history of the game. Francisco Liriano, a no-hitter, some big performances and home runs. But Joltin' Joe DiMaggio made his major league debut on this day in 1936. And I think that's the clear choice for me. Joe DiMaggio is always going to be remembered for his 56-game hitting streak. He's talked about all the time, how nobody's really came close since doing it. And, Joe DiMaggio's career is, I think, very slept on just with how great the Yankees organization has been in terms of upper-end Hall of Fame talent. He won 3 MVPs, was a 13-time All-Star, won 9 World Series, 2 batting titles, a .325 career hitter, 361 home runs, 2,214 hits, 79.1 career WAR, 1,390 runs scored, and 1,537 runs driven in. And you're like, wow, those are really great stats for a guy who played 15 to 20 years in Major League Baseball. Joe DiMaggio played 13 seasons and is really 12 and a half because in 1949 he missed about half the games. So Joe DiMaggio is inner circle great. And he doesn't get talked about as much because of the popularity of Mickey Mantle, because of the greatness of Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig in Yankees lore. But Joe DiMaggio, just in terms of winning, is one of the most important players in Yankee history and baseball history. I know the 56 game hitting streak gets talked about, dating Marilyn Monroe gets talked about, but this is the Yankee Clipper we're talking about, and a guy who just had some amazing seasons. His second year in the league at 22 years old, he led the league with 8.4 WAR, 151 runs scored led the league, 215 hits, 35 doubles, 15 triples, 46 home runs led the league, 167 RBIs did not lead the league. He walked 64 times to 37 strikeouts, batted .346, did not lead the league, .412 on base percentage, .673 slug led the league, 1085 OPS, which is good for a 166 OPS plus. He led the league with 418 total bases. We talked about when Jim Rice came up on the program how special a 400 total base season is. And he finished second in MVP voting at 22 years old. And why did he finish there? Well, Charlie Gehringer of the Tigers, as a second baseman, has 7.9 WAR, 133 runs, 209 hits, 14 home runs, 96 RBIs, walked 90 times, 371 batting average. So he led the league in batting average, was on the better team in 1937, excuse me. So 22 years old, finished second in MVP voting. And now I know a lot of people say that Joe DiMaggio doesn't deserve one of his MVPs because of the greatness of Ted Williams, and you can make that argument. They were both really fantastic that season. But then you can easily make the argument right there that at 22 years old, he should have had his first MVP. In 1939, he won his first actual MVP, edging out Jimmy Fox and Bob Feller, Ted Williams, of course. And in that season, 8.3 WAR, 176 hits, 108 runs, 30 home runs, 126 RBI, 381 batting average, won the batting title, which mattered a lot back then. That's part of why Gehringer won the one before and why he won this one in a tight race here at the top. In 1940, he finished third. In 1941, he won again. And I think this is the one where most people think Ted Williams should have won the MVP because he had 10.4 WAR, led the league in runs and home runs and walks, and hit .406. Joe DiMaggio, the Yankees were better that season. But Joe DiMaggio, 9.3 WAR, clearly an MVP-level season, 122 runs scored, 193 hits, 30 home runs, 125 RBIs, 76 walks, a 357 batting average, 440 on base, 643 slug, a 1083 OPS. Now, was he better than Ted Williams in 1941? No. But was he an MVP caliber player that season? Absolutely. The trend continued. He was top 10 in MVP voting. 8 of his 13 years. He was fantastic. In 1947, he won his final MVP over Ted Williams again. And this one also, people point to as being Ted Williams' award and them not wanting to give it to him because of the quality of the team. And I think this one is more egregious. People talk about 41. Joe DiMaggio, 4.7 WAR, 97 runs, 168 hits, 20 home runs, 97 RBIs, 315, 391, 522. Ted Williams led in almost all those categories, including being way ahead in walks. But in the following season, 1948, Joe DiMaggio lost out to Lou Boudreau. Second place, Lou Boudreau had a 10 WAR season as a second baseman, but didn't really have any categories that he led the league in outside of that. Joe DiMaggio led the league in home runs, RBIs, had a 6.9 WAR season, batted .320. He was fantastic. Throughout his whole career, high prime guy, retired at 36 years old. and he lost 3 years to military service from 43 to 45, right in the heart of his career, ages 28 through 30, where his numbers could look a lot crazier where they currently are. He could have added another MVP or two in that span. That's how good Joe DiMaggio was. And I recommend, for those of you that are out there saying Mickey Mantle was better than Joe DiMaggio, that you look at their, per game stats and try to make that argument, because I don't agree. I think the sentiment is Mantle, is better. Mantle had more power. Mantle was more gifted in terms of speed. But Joe DiMaggio played a fantastic center field defensively, much better than Mantle did. Was a much better contact hitter. Saw the ball really well, didn't strike out nearly as much, walked more, walked on a rate basis more, and had these amazing, amazing seasons for 9 World Series winning championship teams where he was, a centerpiece. He doesn't get the love that he deserves as, probably a top 10 player to play the game. Rounding things out here on the show, asking, folks that this time of year, like I said, there's not a lot of things that are set in stone. There's still teams trying to find their identity and push in a certain direction, between calling up minor leaguers, making trades, signing guys off the street. Teams are going to make impact moves that change the identity of their team with where they currently are. So please be kind in terms of, the content, in terms of to your teams, your fan bases, the players, the coaches. There's a long season ahead. We have the whole summer to go by. But please be kind is also, a moniker that my buddy Ken over at, here in Connecticut, if you've seen the please be kind signs all over the place. It's such a simple moniker to keep in mind, because you never know, what someone is going through. In Cleveland, we saw, a fan say some pretty heinous things to Jarren Duran, who was open about his depression and attempted suicide. And you had a fan say some pretty gnarly things at him, which got a reaction. So please be kind. You don't know what someone's going through. There's so many things, your health, both mentally and physically, struggles at work, whether you're trying to hit 100-mile-per-hour fastballs or just trying to get by. Please be kind. And, as I do every year, this is the time of year where East Haven Public Television participates in the Great Give, which is a 36-hour window of giving for all the nonprofits here in the New Haven area through the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. And we will be putting on our 3rd annual telethon, which is, sponsored by the Gleeful Conspiracy and Calcani Realty, Lori Majorano. We have 2 fantastic musicians that are going to be performing, Sarah Dunn and Brian Larney, 6:30 p.m. Eastern this Wednesday, May 7th, over on the ETV YouTube channel. I'll leave a link in the description below to both the YouTube channel, so you can subscribe over there and watch the stream, listen to some music, hear about what we do here, as well as the link to donate. Donations opened on Friday and will be open through 8 p.m. on Thursday, May 8th. So any donations, if you can give, would help this organization that I've been a part of and invested a lot of time into here in East Haven. We're trying to get people media literate in the community, give them the platform to produce shows like this podcast, to learn about cameras, multicam, photography, social media, everything that we can do to help train the next wave of content creation here in Southern Connecticut and beyond. So I appreciate each and every one of you who spent part of your solo shot Saturday with me. Hugo, Mookie, Adam, everyone that was in the chat, thank you so much. For those of you that are new to the show or liked what you saw, make sure that you like the video on YouTube and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're listening audio only, and share the show with a friend who loves the game of baseball as much as we do. I'm Don Manna, and I'll see you guys